Good morning, Vaughn.
Good morning, Harold, and what a week. Budget
Well,
week. Yeah.
absolutely no week I'd rather than speaking to you than the end of a budget week. So, well, what are your takeaways?
Well, it's been a long time, Harold, since I've seen a budget that landed this badly. Usually there are people that'll say, well, I like this about it and didn't like that or whatever. This budget has very few friends. I think the nicest thing I heard anybody say about it was, well, it could be worse. Right from the outset, there was a problem. I've done a lot of budget lockups, and on this one, I was 5 minutes in, and I looked at page one, and the finance minister had told us, Brendan Bailey, a few days before, the deficit was going to go down year over year. The top of page one, the deficit was going up 40%. Not a small amount, $4 billion. And I went, well, I know what I'm going to be writing about. There's a whole lot of other stuff in there to write about, but a finance minister who tells you that she's going to reduce the deficit year over year and then brings in a deficit that goes up $4 billion, 40%, a record. I don't even know, Harold, I can't really come up with a reason why she would have given such a misleading advance impression of her own budget.
Now, you were also hearing pre-budget some rumors about a potential tax increases, and people are saying, well, that not likely to happen. But we did see personal income tax
Yes.
increases, and we saw an expansion of the PST. What
Well, again, on Sunday before budget day, the finance minister, Brenda Bailey, said, I heard, a lot of people say, well, you should increase taxes. And it's not going to be that kind of a budget. Well, she did increase taxes, $2 billion over 3 years. And some of those tax increases are really targeted in a way that will affect some people disproportionately. We've already seen with seniors who take advantage of the thing that allows them, introduced by the NDP, by the way, under Dave Barrett, the deferral plan on property taxes. So you can defer your property taxes. The province essentially subsidizes you being able to do that with a low interest rate. And and you can keep your home and stay in your neighborhood because this is for people that, as we say, are house rich, but on fixed incomes. So they changed that. They brought in, you're right, they've expanded the provincial sales tax to a bunch of things that weren't being taxed. Interesting, Brenda Bailey spoke to the Chamber of Commerce here in Victoria the morning after the budget. And one of the things they got up and they said, your government is starting to apply the provincial sales tax to security services. So those are going to be taxed at 7%. Do you realize that all the businesses in downtown Victoria are having to hire security because of violence and vandalism and windows being smashed and people sleeping in the doorways? So the government has failed to deal with the public safety issue in Victoria, and now you're going to tax us for the security we're having to hire because of that. So there's a lot of things that have happened over the week that we've gradually picked up on, consequences that weren't as obvious in the budget on budget day. That's characteristic of budgets, that we don't
yes.
pick up on everything on day one. But when you start to put together the list on this budget, childcare capped, government promised, NDP promised in 3 elections, universal $10 a day childcare. They've capped the access at 10% of the cases, right? We've had housing stories, housing projects, housing long-term care facilities that are put on hold. So when you put all the list together, it's a pretty long list of negative consequences. And I'm not hearing from very many people who have much in the way of a good word to say about this budget.
Now, they did increase spending primarily in healthcare, another $2.8 billion. I mean, that's a massive budget. So what is that going to buy us, or what are they hoping to buy with that?
Yeah, again, she says we're reducing spending. Well, no, they're not. It's going up $4 billion, and most of that is in healthcare and education. Now, when you look at it, though, it's not really adding a lot of new programs. Like, it isn't clear that this will deal with the problem in many communities of the ER closing. Whether that will stop, whether those will continue, it doesn't look to me like an awful lot of what they're doing is just paying for the existing system and the fact that they've given some pretty big wage increases. So it's not clear that the extra $4 billion is going to make a lot in terms of results. Minister said, oh, public safety is a priority. Well, now we're seeing that advocates are pointing out that the two ministries in charge of public safety, Attorney General and Solicitor General, almost no budget increase there. And you go through the list, an awful lot of ministries are flatlined. So, the head of the Public Service Union, Paul Finch, said, look, if you flatline funding for ministries year after year, and you're not covering the cost of all the wages you've approved, what's going to happen is that services will be reduced, waiting lists will be increased, things that you've been doing will be dropped because you don't have the kind of flatlining is actually a cut once you put in wage increases and inflation. So I think we're going to be covering the fallout from this budget for some time to come, Harold.
Well, because there is also a plan to reduce the workforce, but we don't know yet where that's going to fall.
No, and it's big in a number terms. They say they're going to reduce the broad public sector workforce by 15,000 positions over 3 years. So the broad public sector workforce isn't just the people who work for central government. There's about between 400 and 500,000 positions if you include, hospital regions and agencies and all that. So that group is going to be reduced overall, but they say it won't be frontline people, and they say they'll try to accomplish it as much as they can through early retirements or moving people around, moving people from job over here, which is no longer that important, to job over here, which is much more needed. So, and they say it'll be 3 years. It's still, that's a lot of disruption in the public service in its broadest terms. I think it's understandable that, particularly the unionized workers and those in the front lines are looking at, well, how good is the early retirement package going to be? Or how much freedom will I have to avoid being relocated, which may not be into as good a job or in the same location. So it's fairly big. It's 3% of the entire workforce overall. So as a percentage, it's not huge, but it's pretty ambitious. And for this government, it's the first sign we've seen of any willingness to do this.
Does it also come with a hiring freeze, whatever that means?
Yes, a hiring freeze, which we collect examples that it does not seem to apply to political appointees and to people working as special advisors to the premier and that sort of thing. They've said, well, you can't expect us to leave ministers without political staff, and we're going, okay, well, yeah, so they're exempt. So again, that's a watching brief for us. We have to look at it example by example. For example, we discovered this week that they've hired a former deputy minister in government to be the premier's personal liaison on the plan to redo the Declaration Act, the act connected to that UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So they've hired a former deputy minister, and he's going to go around and talk First Nations and see if he can get them to go along with the amendments that the government wants to bring in. Again, that's not a government that says we got to make do with what we have. That's a government that every time it's got a special assignment, well, let's go out and hire somebody else to do it. That's what they're doing, and that's what they're doing.
Another thing you spotted in the budget, not dollars and cents, but the abolition of the independent watchdog on hiring.
Yeah, this is a major, major decision because the independent watchdogs of the legislature, so you've got the Auditor General and the Ombudsman and the Conflict Commissioner and the Information and Privacy Commissioner. There's a lot of these offices. The Merit Commissioner's job So this office has been around for about 25 years. The job is to make sure that vacancies in the public service are filled on the basis of merit, qualifications, not political connections. And that applies to promotions, and with all those reductions coming, it applies to dismissals. So the existing commissioner, I talked to him this morning, David McCoy. His term is up next month, so he's not really, he would have to adjust anyway. But he said he's very sad. He says very sad because he said his office, this watchdog office, is there to show that the process is clean and clear and fair and independent. He said public servants come to him, come to his office and say, I was passed over for this promotion. And I think it was because of political influence. And he goes and looks through it all, or someone says they were fired, or a job is posted and it's filled. And what his office does is they audit they take complaints and they look into those, but they also audit about 10-15% of all the appointments in government every year. There's thousands of them. They pick them at random and they go, was the process fair, impartial? Did they handle it the right way? And McCoy says, have a look at my reports. And I have. And they find a significant number of positions where the process was tainted or improper or not followed in the right way. It's dozens of positions that there are problems. And of course, since this is a random audit, it extends it. If you extrapolate, it means that there may be a couple of thousand positions that would be under cloud if you audit them all. So that's what his reports say. And he's found a lot of this over the years. And he said there's some evidence that some of the abuses are getting worse. So here's the problem. Not only is that what the record shows, but when the finance minister, Brenda Bailey, was asked why she's getting rid of this office, she said they're not finding anything. They're not finding anything. And that's an incredible statement because they're finding all kinds of stuff. It's there in the reports. I asked Bailey in a news conference this week, or a scrum, I said, do you even read these reports from the commissioner, the merit commissioner, before you said they're not getting anything? She ducked the question. I will be generous to the minister and say, I don't think she did read the reports. I think somebody in the government decided they wanted to be rid of this office, and they told the minister to do it, and they gave the minister a misleading account of what the office has been doing. I can't believe if she'd read the reports that she would said there's nothing there. So I will say that I think she was simply misinformed or unaware of what was going on. But this is devastating to me. These watchdog positions in government are really important because they're independent, because they're not subject to the political dictates of the Premier's office and the government. And with the government turning the public service inside out to some degree, it's more important than ever that there be a watchdog on how the vacancies are filled, how promotions are handled, how people are reassigned, and how people are dismissed.
All right, Vaughn. Lots more on this, and we'll watch for your column based on your interview with the Watchdog. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. We'll talk again.